Phil,
Yes.
how are we doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you very much for joining me on Mastering Business Growth. So the whole point in this show, as you know, is I'm trying to master business growth. So I figured the best way to do that is to speak to people like yourself who are doing very well in business and see if we can learn a thing or two. So please, can we start with who you are and what you do?
Okay, so my name's Phil Chell. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Hera Waterproofing Limited. I also have recently founded a company called Chiron AI. So Hera is a flat roofing waterproofing manufacturing company. So we service sort of building surveyors, architects. That's our client base. And I've recently started another company called Chiron AI, which was an internal department within Hera, showing it to clients and the integration we built within the become its own business effectively. So it's now another company that we run.
I got you. So obviously in that industry, AI is still behind the times, let's say, maybe frowned upon. Why did you decide, right, I'm going to go ahead and implement AI into this? And, you must have been thinking it might not be received that well. Yeah, why'd you go for it?
It's a funny one. So I'd worked in the construction industry for sort of 15 years and worked for some really big companies in quite senior roles. I got to the point in my last company, they're an amazing place to work, but the company changed quite quickly, and I thought I want to go out and do something on my own. So I set up Hera, and I was literally on my own. So I went from working for a company where there was sort of 120 employees that could help me if I needed like a question answering or something setting up. I went from having that support network around me to literally being me on my own in front of a laptop. So there's only so many hours in the day. I had to build the business very quickly on my own. So I started messing around with AI integrations to help myself more than anything else. And we built some sort of automation using ChatGPT. We then started using a thing called Anthropic. We then started building 3D models using a technique called photogrammetry, which is where you use a really high-powered drone to sort of photograph a build and then build a 3D model from it. And from doing that, we had a lot of clients asking us like, well, how have you done that? And are there ways in which we can implement it into what we do? So that's where Chiron has come from. Chiron's still in its infancy. Hera is a going concern now, and it's been trading for a couple of years now. We've gone from 0 to £2 million of the turnover in 13 months. So, growing very, very rapidly. But that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have had the foresight to go out and sort of plug some AI into the business just to sort of fill the gaps of people within the company effectively.
Take me to the beginning.
Yeah.
Where did it all start? Like, why'd you get into construction first of all? So I like to learn about business specifically. So that's quite a jump to go for a company where you had all this support around you to working for yourself.
Yeah.
What made you think I can do this? So
the industry in which I operate, there's a lot of sort of incumbent operators that do basically the same thing. In the flat roofing market, there's sort of 5 big players at the top end of the market. And when you sort of look at what they actually do, they all basically do the same thing. The products are pretty much the same. The service levels you get are pretty much the same. The pricing is pretty much the same.
Well, do you know what's interesting? Let me just stop you there. You said, and you're quite open with your clients about that what you provide is effectively the same, but there's obviously other things that package it and surround it that make you the clear choice. What exactly are those things?
So if you look at what Hera sells actually is felt roofing, so bitumen. Okay, so in terms of what that is as a technology, that was invented 65 million years ago. It's not been improved upon. A good flat roof is a good flat roof. The product's the same. Yet there are some technical differences, and you do get some chemical differences as to why one operates and works in one way compared to another. But the products are basically the same. If it's designed properly and it's installed properly, that roof's going to last for however long it's going to last for. The differentiator in what we offer is not about product, because in a competitive market, if everybody's products are the same, you can't go and differentiate down that route. You've got to go a different way. So some of our competitors differentiate in their sustainability accreditations and the way they go to the market in that way. Some of them are very good in specific markets like social housing or education. But I thought, how do we stand out in a crowded market? And it was around service delivery and collaboration was the main thing. But the business was built on 2 words, collaboration and technology. And I thought it was the collaboration piece that would drive the business, which it has done to begin with, but it's now the technology that's taken over that drive of growth into the company.
Is that just because it streamlines the hell out of the before and after, perhaps? Yeah,
exactly. So if you look at a lot of our clients and a lot of the contractors that we work with still are, with the greatest respect, and they use these lot of antiquated processes, and we're helping them to sort of see past that and look at how they can leverage technology to make their life a lot easier and a lot quicker. So in terms of so building surveyors are the lifeblood of our industry in the market in which we operate. The average age of a building surveyor is 55, and there are less and less of them coming into the industry. The Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors say there's a slow decline of people coming into that part of the industry. And that's not just building surveying, that's the construction industry in general. You know, the average age is increasing, there are less and less people coming into it. Yet the services are still required. We still need building surveyors, and we still need construction managers, we still need project managers. So how do you get around that? You can't make more people. You can't put a gun to somebody's head and say, go to university and become a quantity surveyor. Yet their service is still required. So how do you get past that? So, you know, these are highly skilled, highly scarce individuals. So what we've done with Chiron is we're building a platform that 10x's their productivity. So the first thing we've built is a tender analysis portal. For a building surveyor to analyse a tender could take them 5 hours. It could take them 3 days. Chiron does it in about a minute. So it instantly gives them more time. So you can't create more people, but you can make them more productive. So that's what Chiron does for the industry.
It's not just more time. It's giving people the room to focus on the thing that they're actually meant to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because that's really important. The sort of the tender analysis aspect of what they have to do, and that's just the first thing that we've built. But you know, they have to service their clients in a number of different ways. And building surveyors tend to go to people like us in the flat roofing world and say, right, we've got a building, and there could be 5 or 6 different packages attached to the design of that building. They might need to look at the flooring, the roofing, the windows, the boilers, whatever it is. And what they tend to do is they will give out the element of the design to the specialists. So they'll give us the flat roofing, they'll give the boiler work or the heating to an M&E consultant or whatever it might be. So they have a number of things in which they have to do to get that project over the line. So whereas Hera can help them with one element of the flat roofing, we're now thinking, well, actually, Chiron can build the other elements to make them more efficient, which is where we're starting to get traction. We've built some of these integrations for some of our clients, and then they've then showed it to their friends, and we literally get people knocking on the door saying, we want you to do that for us. So that's where Chiron's got to at the moment. We're just about to launch that first product into the market, which is really, really exciting.
That does sound exciting. So what I'm curious about is, you're quite early on, it's all in the infancy of integrating AI into construction. Is there any kickback from other people that you're working with? Because the way I see it is, well, the way I thought it was until you just said was, people are fearing their jobs being replaced by AI. Whereas, you know, and even when you look at it, I don't know the first thing about that industry really, but you can see how some people go, that's going to take away my job.
It's a really interesting point, that is, because when I started Hera a couple of years ago, I did a CPD showing them what Hera does, and I showed them a little video at the end of one of the first things that we were doing. And one of the things that we can do is we can use AI to analyze a photograph, and it looks at the photograph and it instantly tells you what's wrong in the image. And I showed it to a building surveyor, and I think he was probably mid-50s. He marched me out of the room. He's like, that's going to take my job. So it's a generational thing. It depends on the age of the person you put it in front of. So yeah. I'm 45 now, so I'm on the cusp of being a millennial or a Gen X, I think we're called. If you show anybody that's over that age, they're really sort of resistant to it and they're fearful of it.
But are they as aware of the fact that people aren't coming into the industry now?
No, I don't think they are. But I think because they're sort of coming towards perhaps the end of their career, they're thinking, well, this could push me out the door almost. So if you show it to those kind of, that generation, they're very fearful. You show it to my generation, and most people are like, that's great. They don't quite believe how it works. They're like, it's sorcery, it's magic. They don't understand it. You show it to a building surveyor that's in his late 20s, early 30s, and it's just like, yeah, okay. It's ubiquitous and they're used to it. So it really depends on who you show it to, really. It's a really interesting dynamic when you put it in front of the person, depending on their age.
Well, what do you think is going to happen to the industry as a whole as a lot of jobs are replaced with AI? I mean, in many ways, that's great, right? You know, because it's like, why should you leave somewhere where there's, you know, potential human error to be had? If things can get done better and quicker, overall, that's great. People will have to find different careers, but perhaps more careers will be created as a result.
I don't think it will replace jobs. I think this is a bit of a misconception. Like I said, I think it just makes those doing those jobs more efficient, and I think that's the difference. There's a really interesting thing called the Jevons paradox.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, so it's based around, I think he was an 18th century economist, and it was around the Industrial Revolution where people were terrified about what the technological advances were at the time were going to do to the workforce. And what the Jevons paradox says is that for every technological advance you get, it actually just makes the workforce more efficient. Therefore, what their requirement, their output is greater. So, and it's the same. I use this analogy recently. I've been invited to a few tech events recently, and there was talk about students using things like ChatGPT for homework, and now there's uproar about using it. I was like, well, hang on a minute. 40 years ago, you'd got maths teachers saying the same things about calculators. We shouldn't be using calculators. My son, who's 11, he's in year 7 at school, he got given some maths homework recently, and he couldn't use a calculator to work out the answer. And I was going mad. I was like, how in the real world would that ever be the case? You'd never sit to an accountant and go, right, you can't work that bit out because you can't use a calculator because that's taught you at school. So it's the same thing. These are just tools to use. AI is not going to take over the world. You know, at the moment, the way AI is built is it cannot think for itself.
No, you need your own context to provide it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's always going to be that way. There's a thing called AGI, which is coming out next, where it can think for itself, and there's a lot of fear around, you know, what power that will give it. It's not there yet, but AI at the moment, it's simply a tool to make people more efficient, and that's where I think there's a real advantage to be taken, not only in the construction industry, but in the world in general, where it's not going to take people's jobs. It's just going to make your job easier to do.
Of course. Well, do you know what? Funnily, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I remember she did some maths homework recently, and she was using a calculator, and I'm like, are you sure you're allowed to use that? She's like, yeah, it's fine. And it's a funny one. Like, in my head, I'm thinking, I doubt it. But do you know what? Whatever, because that's what I do. And I think, you know, the classic qualifications don't really equate to the real world. Not in the same. I mean, I'm in the business world. Everyone in my network is in the business world. We're all very much use the tools at your disposal. Use what you have. So there's like, you know, following the school rules, which is training to be an employee effectively. But then there's using your brain, using the stuff you have to just become effective.
I think it's a really interesting point, that is, because, you know, the education system in the UK market, and Daniel Priestley talks about this quite a lot. It was created to create a labour force, a sort of a piecemeal labour force to come out to do manual labour jobs and things. The world's changing. We don't need that kind of, that you don't need people to operate in that way. And I find it's the same when you work in a big company. I worked for one company I used to work for, had 18,000 employees. They're an amazing company to work for. But they don't teach you to think for yourself. They don't teach you to use the tools around you. And I think that's what sets apart entrepreneurs. Is like, I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it this way. My wife thinks I'm a bit of a Del Boy character because I'm always trying to find the path of least resistance, or how can we get things done. And, you know, Mark Zuckerberg, when he started Facebook, had that phrase, move fast and break things. That's kind of what we did when we started Hera. It was like, I didn't have time to think, right, what's the fastest way I can get from point A to point B? And I think that's what sets entrepreneurs apart from sort of the component worker, is that you have to think for yourself. You have to find ways around things, and especially in competitive markets, back to that, you've got to find some form of differentiation in what you're trying to do, and that's what we did with Hera. You know, we differentiate ourselves from our competitors in the way we approach the market, and then that has then borne out Chiron. And I don't think if I was working for somebody, Chiron would ever exist, because you're trapped in a box if you've got to work in this particular way. So I think that's why they don't teach entrepreneurship at schools as well, because if they did that, kids wouldn't do anything. You're like, well, I'm not going to do that because I want to think for myself.
Be the cog you are trained to be.
Because you're trained to fit into a particular box in a particular industry, or, you know, you go to university and you get a degree in whatever job that you want to do. If you look at a large proportion of entrepreneurs don't have any formal qualifications. A lot of them are on the spectrum. You know, a lot of them dropped out of school. You know what I mean? Like Elon Musk. All right, he's a divisive character, but that guy's massively on the spectrum. Yeah, he's not only to create one game-changing business in the world is what, like Steve Jobs and Apple. And Steve Jobs is my absolute hero. He created Apple and he created some amazing products. Elon Musk has created Tesla. He's created SpaceX. He's now took over X, and again, X is a bit questionable as a platform. But, you know, if you take SpaceX and Tesla, two game-changing companies created by a guy that's, you know, dropped out. He didn't finish his computer science degree. Doesn't follow any formal way of approaching business. You know, Hera's still a relatively new business, and being an entrepreneur, one thing I never realised was it's a lonely place. They say it's lonely. It's a very lonely place, especially when things aren't going well. You know, because you have all these people on podcasts and putting out these videos, and, you know, being an entrepreneur is amazing. It's great and I love it. I wouldn't change it for the world. But there are times when you are faced with the decisions and it's just you that's got to make them. And they could be existential decisions based around the business. And I remember watching a few weeks back, and you saw when I think it's called the Falcon Heavy rocket landed back on the launch pad. And he basically got an 18-story building that's on fire, traveling at 2,000 kilometers an hour to be caught by a piece of metal. And I thought, if he can do that, I can navigate these problems that I'm facing, So, and like I say, you can't. I don't think you can teach that. You've either got that within you or you haven't.
It's a very entrepreneurial trait to be able to give yourself perspective all the time, because you can be dealing with any kind of problem, usually somewhat financial as a business, and it's like you have to give yourself perspective. Like, this isn't going to kill me. It's fine. But going back to what you said there, it can be a very lonely place, and a lot of people who are trained to be employees and they're happy with that. There's nothing wrong with that lifestyle.
You're right. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it can be fun. It can be, I won't say easy because I don't know. I've never been an employee, but I suppose you don't have to deal with the constant decision making and having to come up with solutions all day, every day that the typical entrepreneur must have. And that leads me to something that you were just talking about before. And I believe the term is critical thinking. Yeah, and that's something that I was never really aware of it as a concept until that recently, but since I started shooting this podcast, really, and I've always been interested in ideas and what people are talking about, and it's you see it a lot in just politics and business where people are really trained what to think and they're really good at parroting other stuff without actually doing any research. But as an entrepreneur, you really have to dive deep and be like, what do I think? Where did I get my information from? And it's something you have to actively bring yourself into and remind yourself, no, that's not my actual opinion, or that's not what I think I should do. And you have to really train yourself and constantly keep on top of it to make sure you're making decisions that affect you and your business. What are your thoughts on that?
I think with stuff like that, the power of your network's really important. Because obviously I started Hera, and like I say, I went from great company, loads of great people, to being on my own. And when I first started, when the concept of Hera was starting to roll through my head, I went out to my network, and they are people, peers within my industry that were either clients or contractors or people that I know. And like, this is what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think? And those people are, some of them are very, very good friends of mine. But what the one thing they all had over me was I'd never ran my own business until I started here. I'd worked in large organizations and run parts of companies, but never, until 2 years ago, I'd never had my own business. And by asking those people, they've become really good sounding boards, because it's really easy to get emotionally attached to a decision that you have to make. And you can look at a decision and think, if I get this wrong, the business is going to fail. Generally, that's not the case. There's very rarely an individual decision you're going to make is going to make the business, collapse and explode in the floor. But still, when you're back to that, when you're on your own, it can sometimes feel like that. So you've got to trust your network at that point. And I think the one thing that I've really learned as well about starting my own businesses and being entrepreneurial is that when you look at starting a company or if you work in a business, business owners tend to keep a lot to themselves, because starting a business, I certainly didn't invent, isn't actually that difficult. You're made to believe that starting your own company is rock hard and it's impossible and you need loads of cash and all this. It's not really. If you've got a good network, you've got a good client base that trusts you, and you've got the balls to go out and do it, and you've got the cash you need to capitalise it, there's no reason why you can't go out there and do it.
I found the only real problem with running a business is making damn sure you've still got cash coming in.
Cash is king. I think the entrepreneurial world, especially in the UK, is skewed by the perception of what the business world is like, because a lot of the stuff you watch on telly or the books you read is based around the American tech industry, and all they care about is growth at all costs. They never talk about turnover, and they never talk about profit, and they certainly don't talk about cash. And those are three different things. And if you're running a business, and it doesn't matter whether it's Apple or you're running your own business, the number one thing on the top of any P&L is income, is money coming in the door. And if you haven't got money coming in the door, the rest of the P&L and the balance sheet in the business is irrelevant. You've got to be able to generate income, and then you've got to make sure that your costs attached to it are less than what it costs to do that in the first place. And it's like I say, the market in which the entrepreneurs operate in the UK market is skewed because you're not taught that. I've started recently building my network in the tech industry, because I'm not from the tech industry, although Chiron is a tech business. And there's a guy that I've trying to build a relationship with in West Midlands called Joff Walters, and he's a tech entrepreneur. He's built and sold loads of tech businesses, and he was saying to me the other day, he's like, so many young entrepreneurs these days are just interested in raising capital, finding angel investors, and he's like, don't chase capital, don't chase that, chase revenue, chase customers, chase income.
I've never cared about chasing capital. I would much prefer not be owing people money.
Yeah, that's the thing is that we were lucky. I was lucky to start Hera because I had a property portfolio that I built up over the years from rentals, so I sold them all to start the business. That was also quite an uncomfortable conversation having my wife.
Was that pre the capital gain tax?
Yeah, this is a couple of years back. This one we still got walloped with it, but I'd been quite shrewd in buying rental properties, and we had not loads, we had a couple. But that was like my wife and the kids' nest egg, because I'd worked till I was whatever age, and we'd sell them all, we'd have a couple of million quid in the bank, and the kids would be sorted. And when I realised my last employer had come to an end, and I sat with my wife and I said, right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start my own business. She's like, okay. I said, but we've got to sell the rental. She's like, are you out of your fucking mind?
Yeah.
So it was a real difficult conversation to have that. So I was fortunate because starting a business like Hera did require a fair chunk of cash, because you got to buy stock, you got to sort of warehouse, and our insurance costs are ridiculous. So we did need a chunk of cash at that point. But not all businesses are like that. You could go out and start a business with very, very little capital these days. There's also there's a thing called the British Business Bank, and they're the only lender in the market that will lend unsecured to a startup in the UK market, and it's like 6% interest. It's nothing.
Oh,
they're
interesting.
the only ones that are in the market that do it. So if anything your listeners get out of this and they want to start a business and they've got the cash, the British Business Bank will lend you up to 25 grand. And what I'll say is, if anybody listens to this and they want help applying for it, I'll help them, because you have to write a business plan, you have to put a 12-month P&L and a cash flow forecast together. And that can be quite daunting for people if they've never done it before. So if anybody wants any help with that, I'm more than happy to sort of help them do that, to get access to that cash. I think the maximum lend is 25 grand, but that's enough to get a business started, really, that is.
That's very good of you. So obviously that must have been terrifying on a personal level, because that would be something people go, in the bank, I've got some properties. I'm getting some revenue from that. That's it. I'm not undoing that. That must have been a huge decision, and that must have been some sleepless nights. Has it been worth it?
Yeah, 100% it's been worth it. And I still have sleepless nights now. Like I say, we turn over a couple of million quid, decent profit. We've grown from a team of me on my own. We've got 5 full-time employees, 11 contract staff. So we've grown to a decent sized business in a very short period of time. So, you look at that on the outside, it's all the shiny stuff around having a business and that. I still have sleepless nights, and I don't think that's unavoidable running a business. A friend of mine runs a business that turns over 60 million quid. He still has sleepless nights, but his problems are just different to mine. They're on a greater scale, and they affect different parts of his business. Has it been worth it? 100%. Yeah, it's the best decision I ever made. It's funny. Somebody walked in the room earlier that we both know, and he said, I'm only used to seeing you in a suit. I'm like, well, I can dress like a teenager now because it's my own business, I can do what I want. So yeah, it's been worth it. And what I will say as well is that you only need one to begin with. You need one customer, one person that believes in what you're doing and is prepared to buy off you something that it costs you less to buy yourself. So if you can sell something for more than it costs you to purchase, and you can add value into that, and somebody believes in you, you've got a business. So you need to put that into practice and go after that. I truly believe that. I think entrepreneurial thinking and running your own business, there's not enough people out there in the market telling us it is, as in what it's like to run a small business, but like talking about success stories. I'm really proud of what we've built within both companies really. Hera particularly, a lot of people said to me, you're mental, you're absolutely mad to do what you're doing. It's not going to work, but I knew it would. In my heart of hearts, it wasn't that failure was an option. I knew it wasn't going to fail. There's a difference. So was it worth it? Yeah. It's been incredible.
Do you know? I love that you said that, because, as we spoke about earlier. I spoke with Linda Plant the other day, and I asked her about that, and she said, "I just never thought about failure."
Yeah.
And I have a similar thing. Don't get me wrong. There's been times over the years where, particularly around the COVID times, it was like, "What are we going to do? Oh my God!" we can't provide our service. No one's allowed to come here. Things like that. And that was scary. And that's the only time it really became clear, like, I might have to find a plan B. Other than that, I never really did. And there's something nice about that. If you genuinely don't believe that you can fail, you think it's just a matter of, oh, I need to figure out that next thing until we can go to that. Then figure out that thing. If you genuinely think that way, all you're going to do is focus on solutions, and then you will inevitably win.
And I think there's have you heard of Ryan Holiday? He's a marketing guy in America, and he's schooled in Stoic philosophy, which is a really random thing to talk about. But he wrote a book called The Obstacle Is the Way.
Ah, yes, I've got that.
Incredible book. Yeah. It's incredible.
I've got the audiobook.
Yeah, and a friend of mine, when I was setting up Hera, I went to my network and said, I'm thinking about this, what do you think? And he's like, you break it down into its constituent parts, like, I suppose, like recording a band, you lay the drums down first and then you build from that. Same kind of thing. It's like, right, what's the first thing I need to find supply. I need to find somebody who's prepared to sell me stuff that I want to sell, and it needs to be able to do X, Y, and Z. Can I find that? I found that. Right, okay. I now need to try and find a way of buying the first lot. Can I find that? Yeah, we did that. And it's the same thing. It's like setting the business up is like that. There's just hurdles that you have to overcome. But what that teaches you is when a problem then presents itself to you when you're sort of live and you're going forward, it's like, like I said earlier, there are very few things that will present itself to the business that means that if you don't get it right, the business is going to implode. There are obviously instances like that, but generally that isn't the case. It's like, right, this problem has presented itself. What do we need to do to get around that? And that book's really good for teaching you about that, because it gives some really good examples of people that have faced some incredible hardship, and you think, right, the business is dead at that point, and they just find a way around it. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI that created ChatGPT, which is what people know him for, he used to work for, or he's an investor in a company called Y Combinator. So Y Combinator are like a startup farm in Silicon Valley, and they bring entrepreneurs together that aren't necessarily fully functioning founders or have businesses, but they get the people together and get founders together. It's called an incubator, and Y Combinator then fund them back, give them money to get the business ideas off the ground. And he said that the number one outlier in any successful entrepreneur is resilience. The products are relevant, the ideas are relevant, how much cash you give them is irrelevant. It's that ability to be resistant is the number one, is the one common denominator for every successful entrepreneur. It's resilience. And it's mad because, again, nobody will teach you that. Nobody tells you that's what you need to be able to do. And it comes back to that, why do people buy from us when there's a crowded market? The products are relevant. It's what else can we do around the service that we provide them and all the other integrations we do. But it's that being resilient. It's such a massive part of it, and that's, like I say, he says the number one outlier to what shows successful entrepreneurs is the ability to overcome problems.
It's that thing too, where like if you are able to be resilient through a long period of time, and you know what, if it takes 10 years to truly learn what to do and what not to do, but then you go, right, I can mimic that again in a year because I know now. I know
that's what you learn. It's like, right, I've been here before. I know how to get around that. So yeah, it's such an important factor that is in running a business. Yeah,
absolutely. So speaking of which, there's two parts to any business. There's getting the work and making sure you're doing a good job. I'd like to talk from your perspective. This is both with Hera and Chiron. How do you go about making sure you're getting work?
So they operate in two different ways. So Hera was, again, based around my network from being in the industry for as long as I have. I've been in the construction industry for sort of 15 years. I only worked for 3 companies at that point. I worked for a flat roofing and a cladding contracting business that a friend of mine set up on his own. He brought me into the industry. I then went to work in the manufacturing side of the construction industry and selling products. And so the last 10 years of my life was spent working at 2 big manufacturers in the industry. And it was just building a network around those relationships are built within those businesses. So when we set up Hera and we went about, it's like, right, this is what we're looking to do. So the initial pipeline of work that we took was from my network, and that still plays a big part in the turnover of the business. But it's then also around the number one, for me, the most important thing in any business. It's not the products you sell, it's not your shiny website, it's not how much cash you get, it's the people. You've got to have people around you that you can trust. And I mean trust implicitly. And I'm blessed with the fact we've got some incredible people in the company. So you've got to be able to put trust in those people to go out and do what you want to do. And what we've done is we've I've set a culture within the business that they all replicate. They believe.
What is that culture?
What is the culture? It's a really interesting thing. So when I started the business, I wrote down all the things if I was going to create an amazing company, what would it look like? So I wrote down a list of things I'd like the company to look like, and I called it the algorithm because it's a set of instructions.
From what perspective is that? Is that from the customer's perspective, from yours, or both?
It's from everything. Yeah. So the first thing it says is, the number one on the algorithm is about the people. The most important thing in any business is the people, and back to it's a crowded market out there for good people, whether it's building surveyors or people that are selling products. So what differentiates it's the people that differentiate us and the way you treat them. So we treat people with respect. They get to do as long as they get to the end goal, they get to do what they want. We give people unlimited holidays. Okay, they get 2 days off a month to go and work on their physical, mental, or spiritual health. So in the summer I go mountain biking most weeks because that's my thing. So we give people the breathing space. We treat them like adults, and they can go and make their own decisions. They know what their goals are within the company. As long as you're doing them legally, and you're not upsetting people, go and do your thing.
I love that. That's so important, giving people space to feel like they have control.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, it's that. So it's based around that. Really, it's just giving people the autonomy to go out and do that. And then another key thing is around the partner experience journey. What a partner to us is somebody that either specifies one of our products or buys one of our products, so a client or a contractor. And for me, that journey is everything. And a lot of big businesses out there, and we're fortunate we're not like this because we're still a small company. We can be really lean and really lithe in the way we make decisions and the way we do things. You get to big businesses, and unfortunately, processes come in and company policies and all this kind of stuff.
90-day payment terms.
All that kind of rubbish. And it needs to have 12 different people sign off before we can get a piece of paper out the door. We don't do that. Because we train people and trust them to do their job. So one of the things we have to do, we create a thing called a specification. It's actually a design document. We tell the client we're going to design that part of the building in this way, and that specification is a prescriptive instruction of what the contractor that buys the materials has to do. In every other part of the market, you have to have about 4 different people see that document before it gets in front of the client. We're like, well, fuck that. Yeah. You know how to do it. You do it. The AI does it most of the time now. So we take a photograph of a problem on a roof of an upstand or a roof light. Chiron recognises what it is. It puts in the condition report what the problem is, and it pulls out the relevant documents to go into the specification in the background. So the spec kind of writes itself now. So we can get a specification out within about an hour, whereas some companies takes them 5 days, and they're really proud of that. We get a spec in 5 days. I'm getting it in 5 minutes, mate. So that journey, the partner experience journey is everything.
Have people adapted to that well? Do people trust it?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, because ultimately, if that goes wrong, it's on us because our design would fail and there would be a problem. So,
and I assume you check it as well.
Yeah. So it gets checked. Like I will cast my eye over it. We're training Chiron to do the checking for us as well, so that it knows, right, if this is what it should look like, because sometimes it does miss things. So I'm still checking it over, and we have a technical team that check this over as well. But it will get to the point where that won't happen. It'll be a seamless process. I keep banging on about Steve Jobs and Apple. Apple's think different. We want to simplify things as possible. Life is really complicated. We want to make things as simple as possible. So we just make the process flow as simple as possible to get those things out the door. And again, that the people that work for us, they know that. So they know they're trusted to go out and make those decisions. And what that allows them to do is it allows them to put information and data in the hands of the people that need it quicker. And that's why I think we've built a good culture, because we trust people to do that.
Final thing I want to talk about, what's next? What are the plans for the future? It's like you say, both companies were one at one point.
Yeah.
Then they've sort of split off and become their own things.
Yeah.
Do you think Chiron's going to become the big daddy, the big one?
Chiron will become the everything platform for the built environment. That's my vision with it.
Do you think it's going to be something that most major companies will adopt?
I'd like to think so, yeah. I think so. So if you look at Hera as an organisation and the size at which it could get to, and turnover, size, money, that's not what I'm doing this. That's not what it's about. But if we just compare both businesses, the biggest player in our market turns over about 120 million a year. Okay, half of that is in the new build market, half of that's in the refurbishment market. We only operate in refurb. We do a little bit in new build, but we're mainly a refurb business. So let's say that's 60 million. So Hera could effectively get to that level of turnover, which would be incredible. A fantastic business. I think Chiron, the total addressable market for Chiron is unknown, because I don't know how big it could be, because, like I say, people are retiring, less people are coming into the industry. If we can build a platform that does everything that makes a building surveyor's life easier, I think it can go stratospheric. I think it's £100 million turnover business days. So I think that's where that will go. Chiron will always be a part of Hera, but I think Chiron will then go off and become its own baby, and we can launch that into the market. And Hera's almost getting to the point now where I'm not really involved in the day-to-day of it. I look at the strategy and I manage the money. But even that, like, we've got a finance team in the company. They just present the management accounts to me, and I write the budgets for each year. But the day-to-day sort of nuts and bolts of the business, I don't really get involved with anymore. Chiron is the thing I'm trying to drive at the moment. And
did you think you'd get to that point? Because that's something every business leader or business owner thinks about, but a lot of them, including myself, I can't see myself not having to be here, being like, oh, is that microphone?
And I tell you why, right? The problem with that is it's your baby, and Hera was my baby. And I'll never forget, a really, really good friend of mine said to me about business, he said, you'll never get anybody that will do the job as good as you will do it, but it doesn't mean they won't do a good enough job. And if you can get that in your head, right, and that really freed me up to make decisions. And again, move fast and break things. I can't control everything. There's only one of me. There's only one of you. If you want to scale a business, you've got to learn to let go, and you've got to give your baby over to other people to look after. But again, if you build the right culture and you have trust people that you trust within the company, that becomes irrelevant. But that took me a long time to think that, because, I'll never forget. I've got in my drawer at home, I've got 3 things in my drawer that I'll keep forever, and that's the first A5 pad thing that I created Hera on in my head, and in there it's like, talk to this supplier, website development, where am I getting the money from? I've got that. I've got the very first quote I ever sent out to somebody printed out, and I've got the very first purchase order we ever received as the business. So, and I'm getting quite emotional thinking about that now, because I remember the very first purchase order we received was for about $8,000, right? And I was in my car at the time. I nearly crashed my car. I was so excited. I was screaming and shouting, swearing. We're going to turn over a couple of million quid this year. And it's kind of like, I remember somebody saying to me, you'll get blasé about turnover eventually. And obviously, turnover's vanity, profit, sanity and all that.
I couldn't believe the first time someone paid us like £1,000
and you're like,
record an entire album.
Yeah. And it was the same thing. So if you can learn to let go of that kind of stuff and build people around you that you can trust to look after that, it frees you to go and do other things. And you got to think, you as a business owner, you're a force multiplier. What you can do can multiply it across multiple revenue streams and avenues. You've got to learn to do that, and you can only do that by people and AI, obviously now with Chiron. But you've got to have the right people around you to be able to do that. And like I say, I'm blessed. We've got some incredible people in the company, some really good people, some of which joined the business and left very, very comfortable jobs, earning stacks of cash in a secure, stable business, and they followed me because of the vision that I had. It's like, I think we can do this better and different.
Well, people want to feel purpose.
Yeah,
they don't just want to make a paycheck. That's one thing.
Yeah. So I think that's next. I think Hera's maturing into the market. It's becoming a trusted brand. It's becoming a brand, which I'm really pleased about with Hera. It's not just, that's Phil's business. It's becoming a brand now, which is great. Chiron's next. That's the one I want to take stratospheric.
Love it. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll call it there. Phil, thank you very much. I really enjoyed that. I learned a lot.
Thanks,
Sounds like
mate.
we have a lot in common.
Yeah.
I wish you the best. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thanks, mate.